Hey everyone, Jonathan Bailor here. This week, I am really excited and really happy because I have the pleasure to bring to you someone who has a special place in my heart. And I'm not going to tell you her name yet, but this is a woman who, back in the early days of the Smarter Science of Slim, when I'm out there with my little tin cup, my little virtual internet tin cup saying, hi, I wrote this book called The Smarter Science of Slim. Will someone please pay attention to me? I think it could really help people. There was this one woman by the name of Lisa Johnson who I then went online. I said, oh my God, this woman, this is a big deal. This is Lisa Johnson. She's got like all these blogs. She's got all these followers, and she's like a Google page rank of 5. And she wants to talk to me. And then she writes this blog post about being like, this is the best fitness and health book I've ever read, or something like that. And then she goes on it, blogs about like all the success she has. And then I come to find out in my inbox, she puts out an email newsletter a year later saying this is still the best thing. And this is all without me asking her to do it. So Lisa Johnson is here with us today, and I am sending her a big virtual hug, and she's just dominant in the fitness blogging arena. She's blogging all over the place. She's on the front lines. She's talking to people. She's a mother. She owns a Pilates studio. She writes things. She's got a freaking line of DVDs. She is all over the place, and she is here with us today, so you can tell why I'm excited. Lisa, welcome.
Oh my God, Jonathan, thank you so much. I'm just going to, every time I'm in a bad mood, I'm just going to play this back and I'll be in a better mood again.
I so appreciate you being here. And what I just want, because you are in many ways just such a wonderful example of what I think real health and fitness and balance is all about. Like, you represent, to me, the point of all of this, which is just like, how do we be healthy and happy? I mean, some of us, like me, kind of like to geek out on the science a little bit, but at the end of the day, that's all a means to an end. It's not about the science. The science is a means to an end. The end is to have a happy, fulfilled, balanced life. And you've got so much stuff going on, and you've got this wonderful ability to balance it all. Tell us your story. Tell us what you're up to.
So I have to say, it's a little bit more like the seesaw. Sometimes I'm up, sometimes I'm down, and every once in a while I hit it in the right place.
Fair.
It's like, woo, I'm at it. Yay. Oh, no, I'm too high. Yeah, it's definitely been quite a journey. And may I say, you are still the most strongly endorsed thing I ever endorsed.
Well, that is quite the endorsement. So I very much appreciate that.
And my little screen just went black. Hang on. So I started off blogging because my clients kept coming in to my Pilates studio saying, I read the study in the New York Times and it says blah, 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 so now I'm going to take this supplement forever. And I'd be like, why? And they'd be like, what do you mean? It was in the New York Times. I'm like, yeah. And I would shoot holes in it, and they'd be like, oh, okay. Well, I already bought the supplement, so I'm going to try some anyway. I'm like, okay. And it just got frustrating. Here are these incredibly well-educated, intelligent people, and they're going to, supposedly really good sources. The New York Times is, what do they call themselves? The Record or something?
The truth, who knows?
The truth or something, I don't know. Everything that's fit to print, or I don't know. So here's this, storied editorial piece on some supplement, and they're buying it hook, line, and sinker, and it was a load of hooey. And I knew if my clients were out there taking this in, that there'd be, at least 1 million other people doing the exact same thing.
Well, I think it's fascinating that you talk about how these are smart people, and I can relate to that so much. I think most of our listeners know that I work at Microsoft, so I have the pleasure of working with some really, really brilliant people. But at the same time, like when you think computer programmer, you don't in your mind envision the healthiest person in the world.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that you can have sort of this intelligent set of people, but this world we find ourselves in seems to have the ability to confuse even the most intelligent person. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's because people get spoon-fed one nugget of information, one little bit at a time. And that's actually kind of one of the great things about, your book was, here's all the stuff together in one place. Let's look through it. Let's compare this factoid to that factoid and why it all goes together. I think people would come in and they're like, I'm supposed to have CoQ10. Okay, now I'm supposed to have flaxseed. Okay, I'm going to not do the CoQ10 anymore, but I'm going to do the flaxseed.
Yep.
And there's reasons. A lot of the studies are valid. A lot of the stuff makes sense to take for certain people with certain conditions or dietary needs. And they're not just, they weren't looking at the big picture. They were just looking at one little nugget and then another little nugget as the media and the marketing machines were going. Mm-hmm. And they would adopt some new habit, but then they would drop some old habit. And maybe one of the old habits they dropped was a good thing to have, and they stopped doing it. So it was like, you got to think big picture. Your body is, this big, vast, amazing series of processes relating to each other. You can't just, push one lever and have everything suddenly be perfect.
Well, and here's what I love about what you do, Lisa, and I love your insights here. And I can see that I love this big picture focus. I'm a huge fan of that. And I see that some of the things that people do, like a good example of a very now popular big picture focus is the primal or ancestral or paleo type effort, where it's like, let's start with this big picture that if it's completely divorced from what we evolved to do, it might be questionable. But one thing I admire about you is you have maintained, like, you've risen to the heights you have in the social media and blogging world without really labeling the holistic approach you take. You've stayed almost agnostic and focused on the end, which is just be healthy, rather than saying like it's about this label. How do you do that?
I've read all the paleo stuff. I've read your stuff. I've read, Weight Watchers, everything from one end to the other. And there's a consistency through all of it, which is lean proteins, lots of fruits and vegetables, as little starch as you can, as little sugar as you can. And if you kind of follow those 4 rules, you're pretty close to the Smarter Science of Slim and anything else, really. It kind of all comes down to that. The diet that's driving me bat crazy lately is those ketosis-induced diets. Anything where people are kind of going into ketosis, I'm like, this isn't a good idea, guys.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
And the other thing that drives me crazy is when people say net carbs or zero carbs, or I'm like, come on. A carbohydrate is a macronutrient. It's like, it's there. You're eating it. You're ingesting it. You're supposed to. Fruits and vegetables are carbs. So many people don't think fruits and vegetables are carbs. Mm-hmm. So,
and they tend to conflate any way of eating which says just be selective about the carbohydrates you eat is then categorized as a low carbohydrate, or even people are like, well, that's a ketosis inducing diet, which is not at all true. It's patently false, but it's unfortunate people do that.
Yeah. There's a guy on my Facebook feed who's constantly telling me that I'm in ketosis. I'm like, no, I'm not. I eat 12 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. That is not ketosis.
Well, Lisa, what do you think? You said those 4 basic principles, which are just spot on, and it is pretty universal. How do you think we can get people? This is a drum I've been beating a lot recently, which is, it's true, right? Pretty much everyone other than the USDA and giant food corporations that try to saturate us with processed sugar, starch, and fats think those 4 things you mentioned are true and good. And if we could just all do that, like if the standard American diet just moved to that, we'd be good. Like, we might not be perfect, but I don't know if that's anyone's goal. It seems to be human nature to like take sides and pick teams and focus more on the labels and to focus more on what we disagree with rather than what we agree with. But we'll never see any change if we do that. How can we unite, for lack of better terms?
I think actually the video that you just put out is kind of a good like rallying cry of putting people together. How about these things? Do we agree on these things? And then kind of going forward. I do think it is human nature to wrap our brains around marketing. So I don't see that stopping anytime soon. Mm-hmm. maybe if the government started doing some PSAs, some public service announcements, like they did with the Indian in the 1970s picking up litter. So like if we could kind of get back to those certain things. Actually, I remember the Schoolhouse Rock. Do you remember those?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's what inspired the slimissimple.org videos. Absolutely.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Because they had a couple of them that were like, eat your veggies, and had dancing veggies and stuff like that. So, something simple and basic like that. I do think what Michelle Obama is doing with the Let's Move organization is kind of heading in that direction. But it's really difficult because there are so many special interest groups in Washington, pushing their own food agendas. And I mean, Big Agra is in bed with the FDA and the USDA and everything else. So it's not going to happen anytime soon. That truly good, healthy messages are going to be coming out of the government. They're doing better in Europe.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating, and also just even what you're seeing in Sweden and some other countries of just like massive dietary change taking place. It does seem possible, and in fact, even it's happening in a negative fashion. Like if you look at some European countries, South America, and some Asian countries where the Western diet is starting to become more like dietary change can happen, either positive or negative.
Yeah, and you're seeing changes within a generation, which is pretty scary. How quickly. If you adopt the American diet, you go down the tubes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I apologize. I cut you off the very beginning of your story. And we left off where your clients were coming to you and they were getting confused and we were talking about the big picture. But let's continue this story to like literally I don't want to turn this into an Oprah show, but I would love to know like where are you at? Because I mean you've got a family, right? And you've got a business and you've got all this stuff going on. How do you balance all this? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, flow. It's all about flow. It's kind of interesting. It's I've been like just get the work done, just get the work done, just get the work done. And then between Christmas and New Year's, I got sick, and I was sick for about 6 weeks.
Oh wow!
I just had this nagging virusy thing that kicked my butt. And while I was laying in bed looking at the ceiling, coughing, hack, I decided maybe I needed to back off a little bit. So I lightened up my schedule at the studio slightly, took a day off so I could do some more writing because I'm like always behind in my writing, and started doing started doing more play. Spending time with my kid, and we had a huge blizzard. Actually, you and I were emailing, and I said I was caught in the middle of a huge lizard.
Yeah, I was like, what? And then I saw your next email, and I was like, oh, yes, blizzard, not lizard. Yeah, that was awesome, actually.
And that was actually the first weekend I felt kind of normal. So that was 2 weeks ago. So I started to, I was out playing with my kid and we were shoveling and we were wandering around. And when you have a big blizzard in New England, people really kind of come together. It's very, it's almost like a college campus kind of feel, like freshman orientation weekend or something. Not as much alcohol, maybe. Awesome. And it's just kind of a really fun experience. I met a bunch of neighbors, and I've been living in my neighborhood for 3 years, but I met a whole bunch of people that I hadn't met before.
Oh,
wow. And my son was sledding down our street, which he just thought was the most awesome thing ever. And so, yeah, it's really cool. It's hard. You're never going to be... Actually, going back to that seesaw adage, sometimes you'll be a little bit ahead, sometimes you'll be a little bit behind. Every once in a while, you hit it in the middle. I do think that that's actually pretty true, and that if you try to get balance on a day-to-day basis, you're just going to wind up banging your head into the wall. But if you kind of look for, over a week's period, am I getting the rest breaks that I need? Am I getting the health breaks that I need? Am I getting the work done that I need to pay the rent? All of those things, if you look at it kind of over a longer period of time, like a week, that I think you've got, then you're doing good. If you can hit some sort of balance over 7 days, I think you're doing pretty good.
What a profound distinction that is, Lisa. That is awesome. I think so often we focus on that day-to-day, almost like holding ourselves to this perfect standard. And in reality, it's going to be ebbs and flows. And if you look at it on a week-by-week basis, I can wrap my head around that. I really like that. That's very smart. You're a smart woman, Lisa.
Well, there's these essentials, right? So like you have to move every day, at least a little bit, and you have to eat healthy every day, and you need a little downtime every day, family time for me. So, you've got like some basic essential things that you have to do. And then, as long as you're hitting those, I think most days, I think, okay, we're doing all right. So.
Well, and Lisa, tell me this, because in some ways, when I think Lisa Johnson in my brain, I see like the superwoman who's got like the S on her chest and she's got her hands on her hips. Because I mean, let's be clear. I mean, when you go up to Lisa's website, which is lisajohnsonfitness.com, and she's got another one which is called bodyphysica.com, which is just two wonderful, wonderful resources. I would highly recommend checking them out. You'll meet Lisa. I mean, she doesn't hide behind anything here, and so she's a beautiful woman. She's a professional woman. She's an entrepreneur, and she's incredibly healthy, incredibly fit. She got the family. She's writing things. You've got all that going on. So often people, I mean, I'll be very candid here. People sometimes see me, they say, okay, Jonathan, you're young, you're a guy, you're married, but you don't have kids. It's all well and good for you to say these things, but that's just not practical when you're in a different life situation. What do you say about those kinds of things?
Yeah, I was newly married and didn't have a kid yet, and I used to brag that I cooked once every 3 months. Once a quarter, I would eat something. I would cook something, and I was a meh cook. I was okay. Like you could probably chew it and digest it, and nothing bad would happen to you. And when my son was born, I freaked out and read all these studies, because when you're a first-time mom, that's what you do. You freak out and you read studies. and just wait when you and your wife start. And there was a study about having dinner together at the table every day, that when you're with your child on a daily check-in basis, they do less drugs, they do better in school, they have better self-esteem, they have it was like a laundry list of everything you want for your kid happens at the dinner table. And I was like, okay, that's it. So my kid can barely keep his head up, but I've got him stuffed in a high chair at the dinner table. And I started cooking. And initially it was frozen stuff in the microwave that I just threw onto a plate and handed to people. But then my son, a few years after that, got diagnosed with allergies. And he was diagnosed with nuts, corn, legumes, and soy.
Oh, wow.
And corn and soy are two of the biggest GMO foods in the United States, and ubiquitous. They're in everything. So, you can't eat processed food anymore.
Yeah, in some ways it was almost a blessing, it seems like, in some ways.
Yep. So I cried. I had a pity party. And we literally had to go to the grocery store and just buy everything over again. It was a hard turn to the right. And I started to cook every day and learning how to cook. And I mean, my son's never had a public school lunch meal, because we sent him to school every day with food that won't kill him. So it's really quite the learning curve that I went through with food. And there was, that whole adage, food is love.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And when you think about food is love, you think about my mom used to make me cake or chicken soup when I was sick, but usually it's treats, right? Usually it's like the junk food she let you have. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Big old lasagna, food is love, right? Yeah. So I started sort of thinking about that phrase and twisting it, and food is love actually means providing health to your family. And a salad is love. And yes, having treats is love, but instead of a brownie mix, make the brownies from scratch, so that at least you're using organic ingredients, and at least you can cut down the sugar compared to what you're going to get in a processed box.
Yep.
And that's when I kind of had that shift in my mind that really made a difference for me in how I approached food. And it was funny, it went to my son first, and then it came back to me. I was always, since I had him, my metabolism's shifted,
Yep.
and he's going on 11. And so my weight kind of does go up and down. And so the food is love kind of turned back on me. If I'm struggling with my weight, then I'm struggling with where my brain is at, and I need to take care of myself. So start with good food.
I love that. And I think that's that's something that I'll be, again, transparent here. One thing I'm working on is I think the role, in our society, oftentimes it's the mother who's responsible for the way the rest of the family eats. She's a major influencer, making like 80% of the purchase decisions in families, according to the statistics. And being in that position of being able to not only give life initially, but then to propagate life in that way is that's just such a cool position to be in, and in some ways it can be scary, but I love your approach to showing how that can be a real positive thing. It's very neat.
Yeah, it definitely runs that way in my family, and I find it ironic. So I consider myself pretty liberal, I have a Harvard education. My major was women's studies. So it was all about an egalitarian relationship, which I do have with my husband. But we still wind up in these like roles, like he's the electronics guy. He set up the mic for me so I could talk to you today. It's funny that we wind up in these like totally traditional roles, and it really is just because he's a horrible cook. So he can boil water. That's about it.
Oh, that's funny. Well, and I know just even statistically, the women are, and God bless them for this, 80 to 90% of the wellness books sold in this country are sold to women, because at least heterosexual men, the stereotype is like, well, whatever, I'm just going to be blah, like such negative stereotypes around.
I read this article in the New York Times.
But so just having that ability to communicate to a broad array of people, and to really, I personally crave more, and it's going to sound weird, but more feminine energy in the nutritional, especially nutrition. And there's quite a bit in the fitness arena, but in the nutritional dialogue, so often I think it can end up, and this is coming from me, so it's somewhat ironic, being a bunch of men being like, look, my science can beat up your science. And it's so not what it's about. Like, at the end of the day, when you're at home with your family or with your friends, dude, no, you're not sitting at the dinner table reading scientific articles. Like, you're not. So
yeah, you're trying to get your kid to eat the carrot.
Exactly. And how do you help? So that's something that, again, I have no expertise in. So I'm curious how there must be massive. I think in some ways, I don't know if it's easier, but obviously if your son eats these things, he'll die. It makes it easier in some ways because you don't want him to die immediately, obviously. But how do you deal with that? Things with like Halloween and going to friends' houses and birthday parties, things like that.
Yeah, the friends' houses are hilarious because soy lecithin, Lecithin, I don't actually know how to pronounce it, so I think that's how you say it, is an emulsifier, some sort of preservative, and it's in everything, and that has the protein for soy stripped out of it, so he's not allergic to that. So I send him off to a play date, and, ring, ring, here goes the phone. Yes, I'm reading the label, and it says, I'm like, he can have that. He actually is very cautious himself, and if he's not sure, he just won't eat it. And he will actually starve before he'll eat something that he's not sure of, which on the one hand, I feel awful that he's, to that level of being concerned about it. But then on the other hand, I'd rather, he not. And he has every once in a while been given, like somebody gave him chicken nuggets and didn't realize it. And there was soy flour on the chicken nugget. So he had a reaction, and it was fine. It was a rash. It went away. It was fine. But you don't want that to happen with nuts.
Absolutely. Well, it's a fascinating, I think it's even just a fascinating thought experiment. And I don't want to geek out on this too much, but and this is going to be a little bit too extreme, so I apologize if this comes out as sounding a little bit wrong. But you have a situation, correct me if I'm wrong, where if your son is given foods that are the mainstay of many people's diets, it could be potentially lethal. Like, it would not be a positive situation.
Nuts and peanuts could potentially kill him, yeah.
Okay. And the reason I bring this up is some of these processed foodstuffs, it's not a question of if it will kill us in some ways, it's when it will kill us. For some of us, people with allergies, it will happen quickly. For some of us, people without allergies, it may take a few decades, but it'll manifest itself in the form of diabetes, and then it'll manifest itself in the form of overweight and obesity. And it's just unfortunate, I guess, like how can we help people to see that just like we would never subject someone to something that would kill them right now, it's probably not a good idea to subject them to something that will kill them later on either.
You know what I love in my studio is when people go to their high school and their college reunions.
Yeah.
So you're younger than me. So when you go, you're in the 5-year and the 10-year range, and you start looking around at your peers and seeing how they're doing, and this guy's getting a little chunky. You kind of start making judgments one way or the other. Oh, she didn't do well after that last kid, and then when you start getting a little further out, 15, 20, and I am blessed to say 25 from my high school reunion, people are really overweight and starting to look sick.
Mm-hmm.
And you can really just glance around the room and see who took care of themselves and who didn't. And you can start to see literally disease, showing with metabolic syndrome and, where they carry their fat around the waist. And you might see somebody limping with a cane. Oh, I just had a hip replacement, or, oh, my knee's been going, oh, my shoulder, oh, my back, and you can, I wish people who were younger could kind of project forward to their 25th high school reunion and look around and see what's going to happen, because there's nothing like a group of peers coming from the exact same background and looking at them over time in these 5-year increments of what's happening with their health and their lifestyle and how it's affecting them.
Wow, that's a great visualization. And in some ways, when we talk about the interaction with children, and again, this is always something that I'm very cautious to speak about because I don't have any children of my own. But in many ways, what we experience as children really does set us on that trajectory. I mean, like the way you can, and there's plenty of people who are able to eat, quote unquote, whatever with no negative recourse when they're younger, but that quickly takes them off the rails as they get older. And if we don't learn those habits in our youth, what are we to do? It's much harder, just like it is to learn a language when you're older, to completely change the way you live your life when you get older as well, I would imagine.
Yep. I mean, I think for most people, somewhere in your 30s, it's going to catch up to you on the scale. For most people, some people luck out and make it to their 40s. Pretty much nobody makes it to 50.
Yep.
A couple of DNA outliers. That's about it. But at some point, you start battling your weight. And for me, it was 35 when I had my son, and I had. And it was a wake-up call because I was very fit. I was very healthy looking, but I was eating crap. And I would literally go to the gym, work out for 2 hours just because I like to work out for 2 hours, and then go eat some French fries on the way home.
Oh, that's very, very common, right?
Those days are gone. Those days are long gone. I just sniff at the restaurant when I walk in. But I think one of the things I have been able to do with my son is bring him into the kitchen and teach him how to cook. And we one of the reasons why my husband can't cook is because his mother never taught him. What do you want, honey? Here you go. She was basically a short order cook. And for me, it was bringing my son in with me, and we did start off baking, brownies and stuff like that, the treats that he wanted. But he'll prep broccoli for me. He'll work. He was helping me with butternut squash last week. He'll come in and ask me if he can help cook, which I think is one of the best tools you can give your kid, is teach them how to cook and teach them the rules. And we talk about it all the time. Like, I'm always taking recipes and cutting back on the butter and the sugar and the whatevers. And so I'll tell him, the recipe says this, but you only need that. And do it this way, cut it down, cut it back. And it tastes good. So he's like, oh, okay.
That's awesome. Well, I even remember when I was very, very little, the ability to do things with your hands. I mean, just get in there and almost, I mean, it's almost like those, like a science experiment. You can make that, you're cutting stuff up, things are changing colors, you've got fire on the stove.
Meatballs, by the way, are awesome.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Get in there, all that cookie stuff around your fingers. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. And speaking of things in one's youth catching up to them when they're a bit older, I'd love to talk a little bit about your fitness studios, because I know you're very into Pilates. You're a Pilates instructor, and you've got a wonderful line of DVDs. And I'd love to get your take. I mean, you'll probably share my sentiment here, where I'm always somewhat fascinated by every 5 to 7 years the resurgence of extreme workouts.
Yeah.
and that is great when you're 20 in quotations until you blow your knee out or do something. but exercise is supposed to be something that heals the body and not something that places the body under unnecessary stress. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just reading, I think it came out around December. There was a survey of physical therapists, and they were like, yeah, thanks for CrossFit and boot camp, man. We were really suffering during the recession until you guys started killing yourselves.
Oh no.
They were literally saying that. We're like, best thing to ever happen to me. And and I remember I was a Pilates instructor fairly new when Bo broke that kickboxing workout. And he's originally from Massachusetts, where I live. And when he actually grew up and taught in the area where I first started teaching Pilates. And we had people coming in with bad backs right and left. It was great for us.
Oh man, that's funny.
And if you look at, what's interesting is if you look at the people performing the workouts, like doing the videos and stuff, most of them have good form. Most of them do. But they're either not cueing it properly, or the person's just not paying attention and kind of flinging themselves around and getting hurt. Or I think the biggest thing really is ego and pride. This guy is going 100 miles an hour on a video in front of you, so I'm going to go 100 miles an hour. And you're obviously not at this guy's level of athleticism, but God darn it, you're going to try. And I think that can really promote injuries, and you can wind up with things wrong with you. So when I was designing these DVDs, and you did it in your book as well, you were looking for the safest way to really attack the muscle groups. Mm-hmm. And so I was getting my Pilates DVD ready. I needed to lose weight. I was on the bike. I was doing the weight training. I was actually doing the weight training that you had in the book, and please don't take this the wrong way, but I didn't like it.
No, that's okay.
So I'm like, okay, there's got to be another way I can do this. So I actually have your entire routine figured out in a Pilates version, nice. Which is very funny. And my clients kind of look at me odd as I hang off a Cadillac, but but I have fun. So I went, I was using interval training, which is what you do on the bike. I was using it. I actually have a bike in my house, but I get bored and I like to mix things up. So I was doing it, just little video routines. And I was looking on YouTube, and the form was so bad. Mm-hmm. Knee over toe was completely ignored. People are going into like really deep knee bends. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to blow out their knees. So it was mostly people who were very young, hadn't had any injuries yet, some 20-something guy with great biceps who's like, doing his thing. And I'm just picturing, some 50-something-year-old housewife whose back is about to like break because she's trying to do what this guy has her doing. So I was using interval training. I did a couple of videos on my YouTube channel and threw them up. They got very well received. And I was like, you know what? Why don't I do another video? Because this is an important part of how I was losing weight to get ready for the videos. So why don't I just put it all out there? So it wound up turning into 2 DVDs instead of 1. And now that I'm in my 40s, I do find that I really do need the interval training to keep my weight in check, along with a little bit of steady state cardio. And then the Pilates I do really because I have a bad back and I have a bad knee. I dislocated my knee pretending I was Janet Jackson in my living room. And so I have joints that I need to keep together. And I use Pilates to make sure that my joints stay stable and strong.
Fascinating. Well, and I love the distinction you made about the form, and like technically any, well, maybe not any, but let's say any in quotations, any movement when done properly is safe. The question is, like, if you're at home by yourself, potentially on like a slippery floor after a long day's work where you're sleep deprived and you have no one-on-one guidance, what is the likelihood that you will perform the correct form? And I know that's a challenge with like CrossFit is, I mean, when powerlifting type things are done properly, they can be wonderful. And there's, I'm sure, some CrossFit gyms which are better than other where they actually ensure, like, okay, you've got to get the basics down before you do anything else. And because the risk, like, again, it's anything in quotations with proper form is okay. The question is, how likely is a person to screw up the form? And can we recommend modalities where, if you are going to be on your own the majority of the time, where it is very unlikely that you will happen to make the mistakes that cause injury? Yeah, exactly. And I think if you're designing a fitness DVD, that needs to be the first and foremost thing in your mind. I tell my instructors when I hire an instructor to my Pilates studio, first do no harm. So yeah, it's brilliant. That's brilliant.
And it's the exact same thing. I'm putting out this product and I can't be in the room, literally grabbing you and moving you if I need to. That's not going to happen. So how can I convey? And so cueing is really sort of an art form within the fitness industry, knowing how to pace properly, when to throw the right cue down so that somebody will move their knee in the right direction or straighten their back when they were rounding it or whatever it is. So that's one of the strengths that I think I have, is that I actually train real people every day. So I know what their foibles are. I know what they're most likely to do wrong. And so when I was putting the videos together, I can cue that.
I love it. Well, Lisa, what's next for you? You've always got cool things coming out. You got your hands all over the internet. I love it. What's next?
Selling some DVDs is definitely the focus.
All right.
Right now. And then we're actually already starting to plan our next round of DVDs. And we're hoping to bring in other fitness professionals with us. So hopefully Body Physica becomes kind of an overall brand. And we have people underneath that banner that are putting out fitness DVDs, not just me. So I was always meant to be the guinea pig to try it out first and see if it would work or not.
Well, that sounds really, really cool. I mean, you've already shown the ability, I think, to unite and to be a lasting and meaningful presence, almost an umbrella presence. So I can't imagine that won't continue in the DVD space.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll keep pushing.
Well, I love it, Lisa. Well, and again, just to reiterate, where can people go to learn more information about your DVDs and just you and your goings-on in general?
My catch-all is definitely my fitness blog, which is lisajohnsonfitness.com.
Cool. And then the other one is Body Physica?
Body Physica, no L, .com. And I am always on Twitter at Lisa Johnson.
And folks, just one more time, there's a lot of voices out there in the fitness world and in the nutrition world. And Lisa, to me, is just, she is down to earth. She's got her head on straight. She's focused on the big picture. She's genuine. She's nice. And I've yet to see her promoting anything other than that which is effective and that which propagates lasting human betterment. And I just think I take my hat off to you for that, Lisa, because I think we need more Lisa Johnsons in the world. So that's fantastic.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you for all that you do, Lisa. And thank you so much, listeners, for tuning in. And we will see you next week. And until then, remember to eat more and exercise less, but do that smarter.